What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I have a pretty interesting video as we're going to decide who is the greatest player of all time in 15 different categories. Now these 15 categories, they range from things like scoring the basketball, defense, dunking, as well as influence and dominance. And for some of these categories, it's going to be based on a multitude of things, including stats as well as the eye test. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Now the first category we have is scoring. And throughout NBA history, there's been many all-time great scorers. But in my opinion, the greatest scorer of all time is Michael Jordan. Now for Jordan, he has the highest career points per game average at 30.1 points per game. He has the highest playoff points per game average at 33.4 points per game. In the finals, he averaged 33.6 points per game, the highest for a player who played more than 10 finals games. Also in the playoffs, he scored 50 or more points 8 different times. No other player has done that more than 4 times. And when it comes to scoring 55 or more points, Jordan has 5 of those games, and no other player has more than 1. Jordan, he's also the only player ever to have back-to-back 50-point games in the playoffs, and he has the highest scoring playoff game of all time, scoring 63 points versus the Boston Celtics in 1986. Jordan also has the highest points per game average in a finals series at 41 points per game versus the Suns in the 93 finals. And throughout NBA history, 9 times a player has averaged 40 or more points per game in a playoff series, and Jordan, he's responsible for 5 out of those 9 series. So after all that, I rest my case as Michael Jordan being the greatest scorer in NBA history. Now, moving on to our next category, we have passing. And the greatest passer in NBA history, I would say, is none other than Magic Johnson. And Magic, he absolutely dominates all the passing stats, as his career average of 11.2 assists is the highest in NBA history. His playoff average is 12.3, which is also the highest in NBA history, and his average in the finals of 11.7 is also the highest in NBA history. And when it came to the NBA Finals, that's when Magic Johnson, he was at his best. And if you look at the 6th highest assist average series of all time in the finals, Magic Johnson, he's responsible for all 6. And in Magic's career, he had 9 different playoff runs, averaging 11 or more assists a game. That is the most in NBA history. And these stats, they are great, and they provide some nice context to how great a passer Magic Johnson was. But for this category, you honestly have to watch the highlights to understand how good a passer Magic Johnson was, as he mastered every aspect of passing the basketball. He had the no-look passes, the bounce passes, behind the back, full court passes, and basically anything you can think of, Magic Johnson, he most likely did it. Now, moving on to the next category, we have rebounding. And for this category, there's really 2 players that come to mind, and that is Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. And both these players, they were excellent at grabbing boards. And Wilt Chamberlain, for his career, he had 801 games, grabbing 20 or more rebounds, compared to Russell, who had 773. And when it came to games having 30 or more rebounds, Wilt Chamberlain had 193, compared to Russell's 137. And even more impressive than that, Wilt Chamberlain had 15 games grabbing 40 or more boards compared to Russell's 11 games. And both these players had 1 game each of grabbing 50 boards. And Wilt, he led the NBA rebounding 11 different times, and he had 10 seasons where he averaged over 20 rebounds a game. It's also important to note that Wilt has the record for the most rebounds in an NBA game at 55. He also has the most rebounds in a playoff game at 41, and he has the second most rebounds in a finals game at 38. And his career average of 22.9 rebounds is the highest of all time, narrowly edging out Bill Russell, who averaged 22.5. And when it came to the playoffs, Wilt Chamberlain had an average of 24.5 rebounds to Bill Russell's 24.9. And in the finals where it mattered most, Wilt Chamberlain has the highest average of all time at 24.6, narrowly edging out Bill Russell's 24.5. So these 2 guys, in my opinion, they are by far the 2 best rebounders of all time. And if I had to choose between Wilt and Russell, I would go with Wilt as being the greatest rebounder in NBA history. And moving on, the next category we have is efficiency. And in my opinion, the most efficient player in NBA history is none other than Steph Curry. And I know there's many people watching this video who will disagree with that and say that KD is the most efficient player of all time. But let me make my case as to why Steph Curry is more efficient than Kevin Durant. When it comes to the regular season, both these players are extremely efficient. Now Curry, when it comes to the shooting splits, he leads KD in 4 categories: effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, free throw percentage, as well as 3-point percentage. KD only leads in the field goal percentage category. And the same thing can be said when it comes to playoffs, as Curry once again leads in those 4 categories, and KD only leads in 1, that being the field goal percentage category. And when it comes to efficiency, there is one elite club in NBA history, and that's the 50-40-90 club. And that's when a player shoots 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the line. And if you look at seasons where a player averaged 50-40-90 splits and averaged over 25 points per game, Steph Curry has the highest true shooting percentage out of all those players at 66.9% in the year 2016. And that 2016 season for Curry, that is one of the greatest seasons in NBA history, as he averaged 30.1 points per game, shot 50.4% from the field, 45.4% from 3, 90.8% from the line, and had a true shooting percentage of 66.9. And those shooting splits are absolutely off the charts and virtually unheard of. And if you want to look at which player in NBA history has the most 50-40-90 games, Steph Curry stands above all the rest with 91 games. And in second place, you have Larry Bird at 69. And keep in mind, Steph's career, it is not over, and he already has a drastic lead on the second place finisher. And the last thing I want to look at is which players had the highest true shooting percentage in a season with the average over 25 points per game. And as you could have guessed, Steph is once again atop this list, and he also comes in at second place. So after all that, I think it's pretty obvious that Steph Curry is the most efficient player in NBA history. Now, our next category we have is who is the best athlete in NBA history. And for me, this is a pretty obvious answer, as I think Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest athlete to ever step foot on an NBA basketball court. Now, Wilt, he was 7'1" and in his prime weighed 300 pounds. And it is well documented that he had a 40-inch vertical, and depending on who you ask, it does vary, and Wilt himself said he had a 50-inch vertical, but I think that might be pushing it. Now, Wilt, he also had a 7'8" wingspan and a 13-foot 3-inch max reach, and he could easily touch the top of the backboard. Now, in addition to that, he ran a 4.6 40-yard dash, and he could bench upwards of 500 pounds. And in college, he's a track star and a high jump champion. He also played for the Harlem Globetrotters, and he was drafted to play not only pro football, but also pro soccer as a goalie. And there's one crazy Wilt Chamberlain story where he blocked a shot so hard it broke his opponent's foot. And on YouTube, you can find a countless number of stories of Wilt Chamberlain doing amazing stuff just like that. And it's honestly crazy how a guy who played 50 years ago is the best athlete the NBA has ever seen. And our next category we have up is dribbling/ball handling. And in NBA history, we've seen a ton of players who have great handles. Allen Iverson had the patented crossover. Steph has the amazing behind the back dribble. Chris Paul has the between the legs dribble. Tim Hardaway had the killer cross. But the player with the best handles in NBA history, in my opinion, is none other than Kyrie Irving. As Kyrie, he can do all those moves and more. He has the in and out dribbles, the spin dribbles. He's a master of hesitation moves and deception, and when he gets in the lane, he's also one of the best finishers the NBA has ever seen. And when the NBA comes back next year, just turn on a random Nets game, and I guarantee you Kyrie, he will do something that will make your mouth drop, as he is an absolute showman and one of the most crafty players basketball has ever seen. Now, next up we have dunking, and in my opinion, the best dunker of all time is Vince Carter. And for this category, I combine contest dunks as well as in-game dunks. And Vince, when you combine both those categories, I think he's the best ever, as he had tremendous power and he was a ferocious dunker, and also he had amazing finesse as well as technical skills around the basket, and he had hang time that is rarely ever seen. And all of his dunk contest dunks, they are visually amazing and just stunning to watch in slow motion. And his most iconic dunk contest dunk came in 2000, where he single-handedly revived the dunk contest. And also, I think Vince has the greatest dunk in the history of basketball, as in the 2000 Olympics, he jumped over a 7'2" player on the French national team, and that dunk is nicknamed the Dunk of Death, and rightfully so, as that is the greatest dunk in the history of basketball. Now, the next category we have is leadership. And this category is one of the most subjective categories we have, and there's really not a definitive answer who is the best leader in NBA history. But if I had to choose one player as the best leader, I would go with Tim Duncan. And I think there's 3 different styles of leadership. You can lead by example, you can be a vocal leader, and you can lead by fear. And Duncan, he falls in the leadership by example category, As on the court, he wasn't a vocal or demonstrative player, and basically everything he did, it rubbed off on the coaches, the players, as well as the management. And that's why I think Tim Duncan is the greatest leader in NBA history. Now, another category we have that is very subjective is basketball IQ. And for this category, I chose Magic Johnson. And Magic, he was the architect and the engine behind the Showtime Lakers. And if you go on YouTube and listen to stories about how smart Magic was when it came to knowing where players had to be on the court, and just the ability to read the defense and understand how to be a step ahead, and know where the basketball has to go at all times on the court. And in addition to that, Magic Johnson, he was also a great leader as well as a great teammate, and his high basketball IQ, it rubbed off on all of his teammates. And when you play with Magic, you always had to have your hands up and ready to catch a pass that came out of nowhere. Now, moving on to the next category, we have influence, and who is the most influential player in NBA history? Now, this question is kind of loaded, and I think we can break it down 3 different ways. You can look at which player had the biggest influence on the brand of basketball. I would say that is Michael Jordan. You can look at which player had the biggest influence on the culture. I would say that is Allen Iverson. And you can look at which player had the biggest influence on the play style of basketball, and I would say that is Steph Curry. Now, to decide who is the most influential player overall, I encompassed all 3 of those different categories, and I came to the conclusion that Michael Jordan, he's the most influential player the NBA has ever seen. And I say this for multiple reasons. As Jordan, he showed players in his time that you could be a score-first guard and win multiple championships, and he changed the perspective of winning, that you didn't have to have a dominant center. Jordan, he also took the torch from Magic and Bird, and he made the game global at the '92 Olympics, and he had a huge influence worldwide, and he's one of the primary reasons that basketball today is a global game. Also in the 90s, every single person, they wanted to be like Mike, whether it be Allen Iverson, Kobe, LeBron, Vince Carter, T-Mac, all those guys, they wanted to emulate Michael Jordan. And I also think it's important to note that Jordan, he started the most popular shoe brand among retired players as well as current players. And that is why I would say that Michael Jordan, he's the most influential player in NBA history. Now, next up, we have another subjective category, and that is who is the best trash talker in NBA history. And for this category, I went with Larry Bird. And the main reason I did this was Larry Bird, he had tremendous confidence on a basketball court, and he would tell players where he's going to get the ball, how he's going to score, and how he's going to win the game. And one of the most famous stories ever is that before the three-point contest in 1986, he walked in the locker room and asked the players who's going to finish in second place. And in normal Larry Bird fashion, he went out and he won the contest. And on YouTube, you can see countless stories of how Larry Bird used to demoralize other teams with his trash talking and his clutch time ability. And I think that's the perfect segue in our next category as who is the most clutch player in NBA history. And being clutch, it's which player you want with the basketball in the final seconds of a game. And for me, there is only one answer to that question, and that is no doubt Michael Jordan. As Jordan, he consistently shot 45 to 50% on late game shots, whether that be the last 24 seconds, last 10 seconds, or the last 5 seconds. And if you compare those numbers to modern day superstars, Jordan, he is head and shoulders above all the elite players. Now the next category we have is who is the most dominant player in NBA history. And I think there's 2 main players you could argue for this category, that being Shaq as well as Wilt Chamberlain. But for me personally, I give Shaq the edge over Wilt. And that mainly has to do with how dominant Shaq was when it came to the NBA Finals. And if you look at some of Shaq's most dominant games in the finals, he was scoring 40 points, grabbing 20 boards, and shooting 60% from the field on a consistent basis. And Shaq, he was playing the slowest pace era of all time and still putting up these massive numbers. And if you look at each of these finals individually, in the 2000 finals, Shaq averaged 38-17 with 3 blocks a game. In 2001, he averaged 33-16 with nearly 5 assists. And in 2002, he averaged 36-12 with nearly 4 assists. And doing that for a 3-year stretch is absolutely unheard of for any player not named Michael Jordan. And Shaq from 2000 to 2002, in my opinion, that is the most dominant player in NBA history, as he was virtually unstoppable, and his only major weakness besides 3-point shooting was free throw shooting. But besides that, when Shaq got the ball in the low block, it was basically over, as he was getting anything and everything he wanted at the basket and around the rim. Now the next category we have is shot blocking. And for this category, I chose Bill Russell. And some of you guys may be saying that Bill Russell, he didn't record a single block in his career. And that is correct, because blocks in Bill Russell's time, they were not recorded. So it is kind of odd to call Bill Russell the greatest shot blocker of all time, when technically he didn't record a single block. But what I've seen, what I've heard about Bill Russell's impact when it came to blocking shots, it far surpasses anyone in NBA history. As opponents of Bill Russell will tell you, if Russell blocked one of your shots, on the next shot, you were scared to even attempt a layup, as he would come out of nowhere and swat the ball at the very last minute. And the intimidation quality that Russell had, it is extremely rare to be seen. In the modern era, I would say Dwight Howard, he is comparable, but one of the things that Bill Russell always complained about is that Dwight Howard would always swat the ball into the stands and he wouldn't keep the ball in play. And Russell said that in his time, his goal of blocking shots, it not only was to intimidate, it was also to start the fast break and get easy outlet passes to score the basketball for his teammates. And that right there shows the defensive IQ of Bill Russell and how smart he was when it came to blocking shots. And I do think Russell, he's the greatest shot blocker in NBA history. And the last category we have is defense. And once again, I do choose Bill Russell. And as you guys know, Bill Russell, he was an average offensive player at best, but when it came to defense, Bill Russell, he was a 100 overall, as he did everything and anything for a Celtics team, whether that be grabbing boards, boxing out players, blocking shots, getting the passing lanes, starting the fast break. Bill Russell, he did everything his teammates asked, and he was the ultimate team player. And once again, his understanding of defense and how he looked at shot blocking as an art form, I think it's one of the major reasons that Bill Russell has 11 championship rings. And it's extremely rare to find players in today's NBA who value defense as much as Bill Russell did. So that right there, that was our last category for this video. And I know I didn't include every aspect of basketball, but I think these 15 different categories, they do encompass many things in basketball, not only on the court, but also off the court, as well as some intangibles that you can't measure with stats. So as always, thank you guys for watching this video, and if you have any questions about my list, or who I picked for a certain category, let me know and I'll try to respond. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching, I'll see you guys next time.